Some of us struggle with depression, and we know that pain that someone else is going through, because for us it's always been like this. Others have lost people to depression, to a sense of hopelessness, very much like the town.
Are you trying to say I'm the one that's responsible for Juan's death?
Video games have come a long way since they were just viewed as toys for children. They have proven time and time again that they can create experiences that affect how we view the world. They can tell deep, painful stories about loss and betrayal, explore philosophical questions in the very nature of humanity, and bring communities together through its culture and gameplay. Video games are capable of telling amazing stories that are even able to change the lives of those who play them. Katamari Damacy is not one of those games. Don't get me wrong, that's not inherently a bad thing. Every now and then I need a game that doesn't require me to be emotionally invested. One that doesn't make me think very hard, nor does it challenge me. Sometimes you just need a game that fills you with unadulterated joy to remind you that video games don't have to be deep experiences to be enjoyable. And Katamari Damacy is one of those games. If you aren't familiar with Katamari, let me set a stage for you. It's September 21st, 2004, and you're at your local gaming store. Posters for the upcoming Grand Theft Auto San Andreas line the windows, people are trying to pre-order the Nintendo DS for the holiday season, and SoberDwarf is looking for a copy of Chains of Prometheia for the PS2. In between the copies of Star Wars Battlefront, Silent Hill 4, and Beautiful Joe, you see this game. Katamari Damacy? You've never even heard of this game, except maybe seen a weird-looking ad in a game magazine. The back of the case doesn't help much either. When the king of all cosmos accidentally destroys all the stars in the galaxy, he orders you, his pint-sized princely son, to put the twinkle back in the heavens above. How, you ask? By rolling everything and anything on the Earth into clumps so he can replace what's missing in space. Okay. You look at the publisher expecting it to be Atlas or whoever brought us Mr. Mosquito. But no, this was Namco. They were known for games like Soul Calibur and...
It's Ridge Racer! Ridge Racer! Remember that one?
But with a budget price of $19.99, it's just affordable enough to take a risk on. You take it home not knowing what to expect when you're greeted by... What? No, seriously, what? What proceeds to follow is an evening filled with the most bizarre sense of joy. The game is just so delightfully eccentric and outlandish and weird. Katamari is just weird. But surprisingly enough, it wasn't just being weird for weird's sake. But the strangeness fits perfectly with everything that Katamari Damacy tries to accomplish. Something that series creator Keita Takahashi was aware of. Keita Takahashi isn't a name you hear very often in the gaming industry. If you have, it is most likely because of his work on Katamari Damacy. Keita had gained a degree in fine art and sculpturing when he graduated from the Musashino Art University in 1999. When he applied at Namco, he had no game design experience. He didn't even own a PlayStation. He initially didn't even get the job of designer. Some sources stating he failed an interview and was only brought on later when another designer recommended him, though he could have gotten the position by virtue of his rather infamous headstrong attitude. According to an interview with Gamasutra, the only reason Katamari got the green light was because he refused to work on any other, quote, boring projects. He had an aversion to games he felt were too formulaic or uninspired, which, having worked on the Dynasty Warriors series, I can kinda see that. But with the lack of interest in working with other Namco titles, Katamari Damacy was born because of, in his own words, I decided that if I wanted to work on a game I found interesting, I'd have to come up with it myself. And that's exactly what he did. The concept was born while Keita was at a Namco-sponsored university, born from the idea of a mother panda rolling her cubs. Actually, that's a lie. He just thought of it. According to Mr. Takahashi, the idea just came to him. Current games suffer from a distinct lack of originality, Keita stated, and this sparked my desire to create something totally unique. I always wanted to create something different that could only be done in a game. The project ended up being picked for his class and they made a prototype. Namco was so impressed with the concept that they greenlit it. They gave Keita a team of around 20 people with a development budget of around $1 million, which was about 1/10 of what the average development budgets were back then. Yes, there was a time where you could make a AAA title for around $10 million. Man, weren't those the days. The game was in development for about 1.5 years and released in Japan in March of 2004, to a fairly lukewarm reception. It sold 32,000 copies its first week with steady sales, but nowhere near the projected 500,000 copies. However, it did just well enough for Namco to consider a North American release. Sorry my pals in Nepal, you were initially robbed of this. When Katamari Damacy rolled on Western stores in September, it was met with a surprising amount of critical praise. There wasn't much in the way of advertising outside of a few print ads, so it was no surprise when sales for Katamari started off small. But then it got bigger and bigger. Katamari's success snowballed and it wasn't so long before it was selling out in stores, eventually selling 500,000 units by word of mouth alone. And yes, you're looking at that right, Katamari did better in America than in Japan, go figure. Not only that, Katamari had won its fair share of awards as well. It won an Excellence of Game Design at the Game Developers' Choice Awards, and it was the first video game to ever win a Japan's Good Design Award. Its success eventually leading it to being a permanent part of the Museum of Modern Art, alongside games like Street Fighter II and Tetris. Against all odds, Katamari went from an obscure cult game to the closest thing to an indie darling at the time. It's fairly obvious that there was something with Katamari Damacy that resonated with players. I mean, it wouldn't have managed all those achievements if the game itself wasn't good, right? Well, while it's easy to just state it was the gameplay combined with the sense of humor that made Katamari so unique, the truth is that was all just on the surface. What really made Katamari a star is what was on the inside. The idea behind Katamari is simple. You roll around a ball and you pick stuff up. The more stuff you pick up, the bigger stuff you can pick up, allowing you to pick up even more stuff. You start off picking up things like dice and thumbtacks until you're eventually large enough that you're picking up people, houses, islands, clouds, like gods themselves. Then ultimately the entire world. And you're doing this because one time your disapproving dad, who looks like Freddie Mercury, got so drunk he destroyed the entire universe. That's it. That's the entire game. Okay, so there is a sense of progression and a little bit of variety between missions, but the basic concept doesn't change much. Even the story and strange sense of humor doesn't deviate from its weirdness. There are only 3 different areas to roll around in: the house, the town, and the world. It's also not a very challenging game either. You're most likely going to beat every level on your first try. It's certainly novel, but novelty without depth tends to wear pretty quickly. Really, Katamari's repetitive nature is only offset by its playtime, which is only a couple of hours. This is worth pointing out. By the mid-2000s, games started pushing a bigger is better design philosophy. Technology had gotten to the point where the limitations of space and processing were quickly becoming a non-issue, and games were becoming more and more profitable. Video games started being sold on how many features they had or how big their worlds were. Katamari, or more precisely Keita Takahashi, was doing the complete opposite of that. In fact, Keita had ignored Namco's request to add more mechanics so he could purposely keep it simple. Not in any attempt to just stick it to the gaming industry, he only had one goal in mind when it came to Katamari's design, and that was to make the game fun.
What's happening?
Fun isn't a very productive word when it comes to game design. I mean, all games are fun, right? If the game isn't fun, it's generally considered a bad game. But it's also short-sighted to assume that the saccharine experiences found in games like Katamari or Super Mario Odyssey are the only ways a game can be fun. The crestfallen world of Dark Souls or the heart-wrenching story of Silent Hill 2 can also be fun experiences. The problem stems from how we define the word fun. Keita describes his design process in a better way. I would like to do something that would make people happy. Coming from a man who has been critical of game development almost to the point of cynicism, his perspective almost seems to have a childlike innocence. He had hoped by creating something that can make people smile, it would be the common ground to cause people to get along. Keita going into game design was almost incidental. Video games were just a way to reach a bigger audience. It wasn't about making a revolutionary, innovative title, and it wasn't to prove that you could make a simple game successful. The only thing he wanted to do with Katamari was make people happy. From that viewpoint, it suddenly becomes clear what makes Katamari so enjoyable. Nearly every moment of the game is spent trying to make you smile, and the game itself is just sort of a delivery system. The game is just so bright and colorful. You're surrounded by all these surreal micro-narratives. The music is so upbeat and catchy that it's still one of my favorite gaming soundtracks. The entire game just exerts this overwhelming positivity that is offset with just the slightest hint of cynicism and challenge, so it doesn't come across as disingenuous. Even the core concept of Katamari is meant to appeal to a sense of progression. You know that feeling when you're playing a game and you come across an enemy that was once a boss you had trouble with, but now you're killing them in one hit? Katamari is based entirely on that feeling. The closest thing to an enemy in the game is one of the few objects that will knock you flying. But then all you have to do is get a little bigger, then you come back feeling, yeah, you remember when you kicked me around? Ha 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 ha. Katamari Damacy! It's about that constant progression of getting bigger and stronger. Everything regarding the design of Katamari is meant to invoke a sense of genuine joy. Though fleeting, you can't help but smile. And Keita might have been onto something, because the act of an authentic smile has so many benefits for combating depression or anger. It reduces stress and makes us feel more happy and positive. And the thing about happiness is that it's addictive. We naturally seek more of it. With the success of Katamari Damacy, it's no surprise that there would be a sequel. After all, we love Katamari.
Come on, everybody!
In 2005, you might remember that on the 21st night of September, We Love Katamari was changing the minds of pretenders while they were rolling the clouds away. This time, Europe got to roll along with everyone else thanks to, of all companies, Electronic Arts offering to publish the title. And it's about what you could expect from a sequel, except Katamari was somehow even bigger this time around. Not only that, but it managed to change up the formula just enough to keep it fresh, with a focus of more unique missions with certain gimmicks like gathering enough fireflies to give someone a reading light, collecting 100 origami cranes to grant a wish, or just building a snowman. But it's still filled with all the charm and humor that brings a smile to your face. It was met with similar critical and consumer praise, and had similar success of the original title, selling over 500,000 copies. And really, that would be all there is to say about We Love Katamari. Except, there was one person that didn't love Katamari. In fact, he started to hate it. To paraphrase this saying, you either die a hero or live long enough to see your franchise become the villain. Keita Takahashi, a man who was frustrated working with uninspired sequels or clones, saw the signs of Katamari Damacy forming into the very thing he rallied against. He even told Namco he wasn't going to work on a sequel, and had to concede after they told him that if he didn't, they were just going to make it without him. Knowing this context, We Love Katamari seems to take on a different tone completely. The entire premise of the sequel was that it got so big it apparently rolled up the fourth wall. The original game doing so well and was so loved that fans wanted more and begged the king of all cosmos to use Katamari to solve their problems. The king is almost always unwilling or hesitant until the person heaps some praise to convince him otherwise. The game is more challenging this time around, with the praise being harder to earn from not only your dissatisfied father, but also from the fans themselves. It's common to think you did a great job only to be told that you're not good enough. And don't get me wrong, I love a challenge, but it's a far more disheartening experience. The original gave you the impression that the king was unpleasable, but he was often generous. Here, it's played completely straight. It's given more context and cutscenes and is genuinely great storytelling, but it doesn't really invoke feelings of joy. But hey, that's just the narrative, right? There's other things that make this game fun and enjoyable. The music is still great. I mean, there's even a song about a man who's overcoming his alcohol addiction. Wait, what? Why is that there? Well, I guess it is a little inspiring and it is a pretty catchy song. You know, I wonder what the song is called. Bluffing Damacy? Wait, like he's lying about? Oh no. Jokes aside, We Love Katamari is still a great game, and all things considered, it actually holds up a little bit better than its predecessor. It's just that the subtext gives it an overall darker tone that somehow makes it a stronger, yet less enjoyable experience. It really feels like Keita did not have his heart into the project. But I guess calling it Katamari didn't have the same ring to it. So after another successful Katamari game, Namco wanted another, this time for the PlayStation Portable. But Keita was finished with the series, with We Love Katamari being the last game he worked on, stating in interviews that he was sick of it.
I don't want to make a sequel anymore.
The series continued without its creator. Me and My Katamari released on the PSP to moderate success. Beautiful Katamari released on the Xbox 360, featuring on-disc DLC for another $10. This point of contention caused it to be rated poorly among fans of the series and sold poorly. The follow-up, Katamari Forever, was sort of a greatest hits collection released for the PlayStation 3 and met with pretty lukewarm reception as well. There was a South Korean exclusive Katamari Online, and then eventually the mobile games came, including a clicker spin-off, and the series only went downhill from there until it faded into obscurity. Fans of the series are also most likely never going to see another Katamari game again, either from Namco themselves or an indie upstart. In 2008, Namco was awarded a patent on the very gameplay mechanics of Katamari Damacy, similar to how they controlled mini-games on loading screens. Meanwhile, Keita was still employed at Namco and was working on another game, Nobi Nobi Boy, which is just as delightfully weird as Katamari. But even if you were a fan of Katamari, there's a pretty good chance you never even heard of Nobi Nobi Boy. That's because the game wasn't very well marketed or reviewed. Keita had blamed a lack of budget and interest on Namco's part, stating he went as far as making an iPhone version as bait to get more money to produce it, and it still ended up releasing feature incomplete, though he still puts most of the blame for those that didn't enjoy it entirely on himself. But it was this lack of success and constant pressure from Namco that led Keita to leaving on so-so terms. It appears as if the gaming industry shattered the dreams of a man who simply wanted to make people happy. This was meant to make me feel better. What was the lesson I'm supposed to pull from this? Don't make anything because you'll only see it become corrupted by greed. Don't try to make anyone happy because it'll only destroy you as a person. Just shut up, give in, cater to the whims of people and algorithms and your companies, and do as you're told or else you'll be punished. No, it won't end like this. It's easy to be upset by how this story ends. Keita's vision for Katamari seems and even feels like it was defiled by things beyond our control. It became just another series of many to line the pockets of a company that didn't care. And now Katamari's epitaph is an endless runner. No one can deny that there's all sorts of problems in the gaming industry. All the drama, the outrage, the greed. It's impossible not to get caught up in it all. You become, rightfully, hurt and angry. On some level, that pain is there because it proves to you that you care about the medium, and it's important to expect it to do better. However, in the process, we lose sight of why we love the medium in the first place. Yet, that's not where the story ends. For Katamari Damacy, unfortunately, there's not much of a hope spot for its future. I feel it's fair to say that the series deserved better. However, Katamari was never meant to be more than one single game. If Keita had his wish, the story of Katamari Damacy would have started and ended with the very first game. It would have been that one chance encounter that many people would look back on as such a strange and surreal moment that came as quickly as it went, but also stuck with you for the rest of your life. It would have been fleeting. It's almost symbolic of how we remember some of our happiest moments in our lives. Despite what Katamari is now, Namco can't take away what Katamari was. As for Keita Takahashi, while he might have left the industry, it wasn't out of defeat. Instead, he continued to follow his dream to make people happy. In 2011, he started on a project to design a playground in Nottingham, UK. Though, unfortunately, he wasn't able to see it to fruition because, in his own words,
in the end, it was cancelled for budget reason. Yeah, so stupid.
However, even then, he still keeps trying. In 2014, he returned to the game industry to work on his friend and pooping sim, Wadham. However, even after Sony ended up dropping the project silently sometime in 2016, Keita still continues to persevere after it was picked up by another publisher, and will hopefully be released to PC and consoles sometime in 2018. Despite all the frustrations and setbacks, despite his inherent cynicism with the gaming industry, he still hasn't given up on his dream to make people happy. The reason Keita chose to use video games as a medium was because it allowed him to reach out to the most people possible, to touch the most lives. And he did it because he wanted to make something that would make people smile. You and I had different experiences. We have different thoughts, different ideologies, different opinions, different favorite pizza toppings. But if you're watching this, hopefully we share at least one single positive experience together despite all those differences. It's hard to say if that shared moment will stop arguing or fighting, but maybe, just maybe, gaining that experience built some character. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for watching my video on Katamari Damacy. If you're a bit disappointed that I didn't talk more about the gameplay, it's because there was already an amazing analysis by Post Mesmeric. Check out his video and tell him SoberDwarf sent you. Or if that was a little too sweet and you want something a bit bitter, I did an analysis on all the creatures of Silent Hill 2 and their meanings. This video was made possible by the wonderful people who support me on Patreon. If you want to see more content like this, please consider supporting me on patreon.com/thesoberdwarf. But if you can't, that's alright. You can still help the channel out by subscribing and sharing the video to those who you think might enjoy it. Think of it as adding a little bit more to the Katamari. But until next time, this is SoberDwarf reminding you that gaining experience builds character.